Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 17, Pre-Witched. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder about what happens within this episode. Alright, so in this episode, we start with Leo and Piper in the shower, talking about how they don't really get a lot of alone time in the house, but Piper is sure that here is where they can finally be alone and be a couple after being married for a couple of weeks. Then Phoebe walks in looking for her gloss, promising that she can't see anything while they're in the shower together, which of course annoys Piper. Then, of course, they get out of the shower, they're back in Piper and Leo's room. And then who should walk in but Prue without even knocking? And this again leaves Piper kind of annoyed because she's newly married and she can't get any alone time with her new husband. So she then decides to propose to Leo that they move. And basically, she explains that when her and Prue had lived together before moving back in with Grams due to her health issues, they had given the lease to friends, and those friends are now moving out of that apartment and have given Piper the opportunity to get first dibs on it if she would like to. And Leo is a little on the fence because the Charmed ones have a shared destiny, but ultimately does, allow Piper to do as she will. We then move on to where Ariel is performing a ritual which her cat familiar Shadow interrupts. Shadow then jumps onto the cabinet and starts knocking off potion bottles in a specific sequence, which ultimately ends up creating a fog or mist that ends up killing Ariel, which allows him to become a warlock. We then move back to the manor where Piper announces at the breakfast table while everyone is going through their standard breakfast routine that she and Leo are going to move out and offers the milk. Obviously, this is something that Prue and Phoebe are shocked by, but also concerned with, similar to Leo before. They are the Charmed ones, they have a shared destiny. They're strongest together and strongest at the manor. And Leo, to help Piper out, also points out when they are concerned that they've managed to handle evil before when it was only Prue and Phoebe around. For example, in the episode where, like, the honeymoon's over, where Piper goes up there with Leo, and then we find out that in our world, 2 months had passed. This is an example of where they've been alone. But then Piper also mentions how Phoebe had moved to New York. However, Phoebe then reminds her that that was before they were charmed and therefore very different. We then move into a flashback which kind of parallels the story to when Grams was still alive and when Prue nonchalantly mentions that she's moving out of the manor, and this of course shocks Piper, and Prue basically says, I don't know why you're shocked. Roger proposed, we're obviously going to move in together once we're married. And then Grams ends up having chest pains, so that breaks up that conversation. And then the doorbell rings, and when they go to look at the doorbell, there are two police who are bringing Phoebe back because she was caught shoplifting a pair of shoes. We then parallel that in the present with Phoebe shopping for shoes when the warlock that was formerly the cat Shadow attacks Phoebe, and she manages to vanquish him with a high heel shoe. Then we see Piper and Leo getting boxes for their move, and then we also see Shadow attacking her, and she manages to vanquish him as well. This then brings us back into another flashback where Grams has bought a new camera and wants a picture. They then move outside, and the sisters cannot stop bickering about basically everything in their life. They're all fighting. Grams then has some chest pains, and they then, of course, all run forward worried about Grams, and she basically scolds them for not being able to retract their claws long enough for her to get a picture, and all she wants is a picture. So they then move over in front of the house, from the steps over to in front of the house, and she takes the iconic photo that we see in many episodes throughout the series. But we see that the photo started farther apart and then magically brings all three of them closer together once they achieve their charmed destiny. And it was first seen in the premiere episode, Something Wicked This Way Comes, but has also been seen in many episodes since then, as it's the photo that signifies their closeness. We even see in, I can't remember the name of the episode, but the one where they fought each other and the charmed ones broke. We saw that it moved apart and then back together again when they came together. So again, an iconic photo. Anyways, after that, we move back to the present, where Phoebe and Piper each return home and mention that they have killed a warlock. Prue mentions that one also attacked in the attic. And after giving descriptors, they all realize that they're talking about the same warlock, and that the warlock was incredibly easy to kill, which is just when Shadow comes in and basically attacks them and once again is easily killed. And then they realize that not only is it too easy, but it's almost like he wants to be killed, and they also wonder, since they've seemingly vanquished him 4 times now, maybe he can't be. Therefore, they decide to go and consult the Book of Shadows, which is what you do. But then Grams, or who they presume to be Grams, flips through the pages of the book, and it leads them to a séance. At first, they don't really understand why they need a séance, but the book, or Grams, is very insistent that it needs a séance. And they then give in and they perform the ritual séance, which summons Ariel's ghost, the witch who Shadow killed. And after speaking to her, they find out that when a familiar chooses to kill the witch that they are guiding and protecting, they have the opportunity to become a warlock. But in order to fully make that transition, they have to shed their past life as a familiar. And in the case of Shadow, because he was a cat, he had to shed all 9 lives, which is why he's coming to be killed multiple times. And the reason he's specifically targeting the charmed ones is that they are the only ones powerful enough to actually vanquish him. We then move back into a flashback where Grams is talking to Patty's ghost, and she is feeling like the sisters are never going to be able to come together. They're always arguing, and Patty assures her that it's likely just a phase, and once their destiny is revealed, they will come together, which, spoiler, that is what happened. But Grams is more skeptical, thinking that they may not be up to their destiny, and that if the sisters can't come together before she passes, she may need to take drastic measures. We move back to the present, where Phoebe once again has to kill Shadow, who's lying in wait in the kitchen, and attacks her. Then we move back into a flashback yet again, where Prue talks to Piper about moving out because she can see how, Piper is uncomfortable with it. But also, she has her plans for her wedding with Roger, and she asks Piper to be her maid of honor, noting that, she's not going to ask Phoebe. And of course, this is like, and then Piper comments on how she's just one by default, and that really makes her feel special. As they're walking, Leo does bump into them just after Piper talks about how Prue has such a great guy and how she feels like sometimes she will never be able to find love. And then, of course, her love bumps into her. So I really like, again, a parallel to the present in the show. And then we return back to the present again, and the sisters are at a cafe, and Shadow shows up taunting them. They say, "We're on to you, we're not gonna kill you." And he basically goes, "Yeah, well, if you don't." Innocent people die, and he grabs a random girl and she dies. So that unfortunately means that once again they have to kill him, and it's the sixth time. And that is when the sisters realize that, they can't just say no, because if they say no, he'll kill innocent people, and their conscience can't handle that. They're the good guys after all. But at the same time, if they do give him what he wants, then he will become immortal and undefeatable, and obviously so a lot of havoc and mayhem and take a lot of lives. Piper is then trying to come up with a potion from scratch to try to maybe help their situation, though at that point she's just made mud. We then get a flashback to Graham's cooking in the kitchen, and Piper comes in and basically says that she's going to eat the last of the brownies, but Prue has already eaten the last of the brownies, so she decides to help Grams instead. She puts in a few ingredients, and Grams asks her how she knows what it needed, and Piper explains it before Grams tells her that she was born to be in the kitchen, but Piper says that she has to work at the bank because it has health benefits, and they obviously need to keep the house. And then Phoebe comes in, and she is invited to make a chocolate decadent cake with them, but she declines, saying she's going out. Back in the present, Shadow appears once again, and once again they try not to kill him, but he says once again that he will continue to kill more innocents, and so Prue does kill him for the seventh time. Then we go back to the past once again, and Grams consults with Patty's ghost again, and we can see that Grams is starting to look ill. She then basically says that she has decided that the sisters will not be capable of fulfilling their destiny, and therefore she has decided to use the potion that she had brewed. Then she goes to leave the attic with the potion. However, she then has a heart attack and falls down the stairs, and that is when she passes, never having had the opportunity to use the potion. We then have Shadow attacking them again while they're in the attic, trying to figure out what to do about him. And this is, of course, the eighth time. And so they only have one shot left. But Phoebe comes up with the idea that, while he feels pain in the moment of death, he doesn't feel pain throughout the rest of the time. It's like a blink, and that maybe making him feel the pain of all of the deaths that he's basically cheated out of maybe enough to kill him. We then return to the past, where it is implied that it is after Grams's funeral, and Piper finds the potion bottles. They wonder why she was near the attic, which was supposed to have been sealed off. And then basically this is when Phoebe reveals that she wants to go to New York. Prue's going to spend the night with Roger, and that leaves Piper alone in the manor. And then we move back to the present again, where they have a potion and a spell and a sharp implement at the ready. When Shadow comes in the door, he's a bit suspicious that they're so ready and willing to kill him, but as he wants them to kill him, he lets them do what they planned, and basically Prue stabs him with the poker. Piper throws a potion on the wound after freezing him, and then Phoebe recites a spell which makes him feel all of his 9 deaths, and it does permanently vanquish him, and you can tell because the explosion is bigger, and according to Prue, there are pieces of him left behind. We then move on, and Piper is looking at the boxes that she's packed for moving, and she finds the bottle that Grams had when she was dying, and the recipe is attached to the bottom of the bottle, and she realizes that what those ingredients would have done to their powers is permanently bind them, and that's what Grams was planning to do, and that gets her to thinking. So the next day, when Leo is loading the car to move, Piper reveals that she has changed her mind and that it just doesn't feel right to move out of the manor yet. And this, of course, is when they return back in, and the sisters reveal that they're going to have to ask Piper and Leo to move out again. This time, they're just moving into Prue's room, which is twice the size. And of course, now they're twice the people, so that's why they're getting the bigger room. And Phoebe says that she's going to remove all of her things out of the bathroom that they frequently use. That way, they will basically have some privacy. They'll have a larger room, they'll have a bathroom to themselves, and while their sisters will still be down the hall and they'll still share the living spaces, it will give them more privacy for their couple life. And all of the sisters agree that it is something that they are very happy about, that while they know they may need to move apart someday, that day isn't this day. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, which was quite a lot for this episode, a lot of back and forth between past and present, it is now time to rank the episode on our mostly objective ranking list first, and then our personal ranking list after that. So we start on our mostly objective rank values that I've highlighted on the screen with our single episode supporting character introduction, and this is Shadow, the warlock, or wannabe warlock. Then we have our multi-season supporting character development, which of course is that we get to see a lot more of Grams and what she was thinking. We see her death scene. We see that she was planning to bind the sisters' powers. We see that she frequently spoke to Patty and still had that connection even after Patty had died, and that she felt that she was responsible for the Charmed Ones and their destiny as their protector and guardian, and ultimately decided that they weren't ready because they were at odds at this time. However, we as the audience know that once she did pass and Phoebe returned from New York, they did come together as their destiny needed them to, and everything worked out. But at this time, we do see that Grams was questioning that. We then also get to see some multi-season main character growth, which has to do with the sisters, who basically we get to see kind of how they used to be in the flashbacks, more selfish. In the case of, like, Phoebe was a bit out of control, wild child doing criminal activities, running away to New York. Prue a bit, well, maybe not selfish, but she was obviously on a different path. She was getting married. She was ready to start a new life separate from her sisters. And then we had Piper, who was giving up on her dreams to be a chef in order to work at a bank so she could pay for Grams's medical bills and have the health benefits and afford the house, which of course she would need to do alone because Prue's moving out of the manor. Phoebe's wanting to go elsewhere, and even before she reveals she's going to New York, was obviously in a criminal mood and therefore not properly being responsible and definitely wouldn't be able to help with the manor. And then we also have our multi-season main relationship development, which of course has to do with Piper and Leo. We learn that they've been married for a few weeks now and that they haven't been able to be alone together, which is why they decide that they want to move out. But upon the events of the episode taking place, they do ultimately decide to stay at the manor. However, they are then given the bigger room and one of the bathrooms for their exclusive use so that they can have the privacy that they're looking for. And then there was the continuity error, and it is a minor one, but it's still something to be noted. In this episode, Phoebe has a line about knowing that Shadow was a cat familiar will make her never look at Kit the same way. Because obviously Kit, their cat, is their familiar. And she notes how she'll also feel uncomfortable undressing in front of him, implying that Kit is a male cat. However, we have had Kit referred to as female before with the word her, and also spoilers, but in a future episode, we do see that Kit is rewarded for her service to the Charmed Ones and is given a human form in order to train future familiars to guide their own witches. And she is definitely a woman that Kit is turned into. So I think definitively Kit is female. And for whatever reason in this episode, maybe just to get that line in, maybe they brought in a different writer than usual who maybe didn't know about past episodes. They refer to Kit as a male, Kit as a girl. And that is like a female cat. Then when she's gifted humanity, she is a female human. So not a him. And that is why that is worth -4 points, which brings this episode to an 8 out of 10 overall for the episode. So that brings our season 3 rankings so far on our mostly objective ranking to in first place, The Honeymoon's Over, Magic Hour, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Just Tarried, All Hallowell's Eve, Coyote Piper, Blinded by the White Lighter, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream. This episode, Pre-Witched, comes in 11th place. Then we have Power Outage, Bride and Gloom, Death Takes a Hallowell, Wrestling with Demons, Sight Unseen, and then in 17th we have Primrose Empath. So now we come to my personal ranking, and a lot of what I have to say was noted in the summary and objective lit ranking, but there are also some points that didn't really fall into either of those that I did want to comment on. First, of course, was Piper when she bumps into Leo after talking about finding her love. I thought that was incredibly adorable, but also it points out that Leo has been watching the sisters, like watching over the sisters, as a white lighter for a very long time. Now, obviously, he does have other charges as well, so he's not there all the time. More probably like a pop in, make sure that everyone's still alive and still healthy, and then like pop out sort of scenario when they don't have powers. But it does highlight that he's been there for a while and was obviously watching them even before they became witches, as he is present there. And you can take that how you want to. I personally, like I said, see it more as like that was his job. He was just popping in and out. He wasn't in love with her at that point. He didn't really know her at that point. And so I personally don't think that it's super creepy, but I do know I have heard whisperings on the internet that some people do think that that's a bit creepy because of the implications that, he had known more about her before they started dating because of his job in watching them. But I interpret it as he has multiple charges. They didn't have powers yet. So most likely, similar to that scenario, he probably would pop in, make sure they're healthy, and then pop out to go help his active charges. And he only really became part of their lives in any significant way after they got their powers, when he came in as a handyman to ensure that they were adapting properly or well to their powers. And so I personally don't think he was like sitting there stalking Piper going, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the day that I get to seduce her. Like, I don't think that's what happened. So it doesn't bother me, but it is worth noting. Then, of course, there is the fact that they did lose an innocent in this episode. When they were at the cafe, obviously, they said to Shadow that they weren't going to kill him anymore, and before they could really anticipate or react to him, he already had an innocent in his arms and a knife in her ribs. So they did end up losing the innocent. Now, could they have anticipated that that might not have gone over well and maybe not had that confrontation in public? Sure, but then we wouldn't have gotten that moment and the plot would maybe not have been able to continue as it did. So we all know why the innocent had to die for plot reasons, but I do think that it is sad that they did lose an innocent so quickly, one that they really had no opportunity to save. And then last comment that I would like to make is just more of a general observation that personally, I've said it before and commented in other episodes, but I really love that Charmed had this most of the spells written in the same language that the series is written in, because so often with supernatural shows, they just have a habit of having spells in other languages, like archaic languages, like very old versions of English or very old versions of Latin, or just generally other languages, so that the audience is kept in the dark about what the spell is about or what the intentions behind the spell are. Whereas with Charmed, what I loved about it is that we as the audience got let in on the spells and also what they meant. Like with the vanquishing spell with the seance, we knew exactly what they were calling for, an unknown beloved spirit who was able to help them. In the case of the vanquishing spell, we knew exactly what the intention of the spell was. We knew that they noted how he had cheated death 9 times and wanted him to be able to feel the pain of those 9 deaths, and it was in a catchy rhyme too. And as I pointed out before, I think that that's very magical in and of itself, because while it may not be mystically magical and that you don't know, it's mysterious, which is why I think a lot of things do put it in another language. It's more magical because you get to feel like you're part of the magic, because it's a spell that you understand, you know what its intention is, you know what it means, and you get to see the effect, and you feel like, especially when you're younger watching, that you could also be able to do that because it's recognizable and familiar to you. And I just love that aspect of the series. And I just wanted to make that observation yet again. As I said, I've made it before, but I particularly liked the rhyming spell that they used to kill the warlock, which is what brought it back to my mind. So that's why I've, again, noted it. And that being said, I really, really enjoyed the episode. I didn't really see any flaws with the episode. I liked getting a peek into the past. I like how they paralleled the present with the past. And I thought that the concept of having to kill the warlock 9 times, having 9 chances, and a warlock actually walking in and being totally fine with their own vanquish, not realizing, of course, that it was going to be permanent just because that's what they wanted and needed the Charmed Ones to do, was a bit novel and very fun, and that is why I gave it a 10 out of 10, leaving our season 3 rankings to first place, Just Harried, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, All Hallowell's Eve, Death Takes a Hallowell, this episode Pre-Witched comes in 6th place, then Bride and Gloom, Magic Hour, Blinded by the White Lighter, The Honeymoon's Over, Sleuthing with the Enemy, Primrose Empath, Sight Unseen, Power Outage, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Wrestling with Demons. And then finally, in 7th place, we have Coyote Piper. Bringing us now to our final segment, which is our series ranking so far. And a reminder of the standings so far, we have Season 2 in first place on our mostly objective ranking at 75%. Season 1 at 73.18%. And then Season 3 so far has 133 out of 220. Then on the personal side, we have Season 1 with 143 out of 220, and that scored 71.50%. Season 2 is in second with 56.82%, and then Season 3 so far has a total of 133 out of 220. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 17, Pre-Witched. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.